You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast episode is brought to you by Lonsdale Publishing. Is your program seeking ways to assess your students' college readiness? Does your program need a tool to document the effectiveness of your program? Lonsdale Publishing is excited to offer the Strategic Learning Assessment, a 20-minute online assessment that provides recommendations and strategies to improve academic performance across 11 learning areas: communication, critical thinking, effective learning strategies, focus and concentration, growth mindset, persistence, seeking help, sense of belonging, stress management, test preparation, and time management. For as little as $3 per student, the Strategic Learning Assessment identifies strengths and areas for growth, along with tailored recommendations for each learning area. Want a complimentary sample account for yourself and 5 students? Contact Lonsdale Publishing at 727-389-8026. Again, that number is 727-389-8026. Or visit our website for more information at www.lonsdale.com. That website again is www.lonsdale.com. Lonsdale Publishing, your partner in student success. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 7, Episode 12. I am your host, Juan Rivas. Before we begin, some community highlights. Trio Nation, be sure to call your congressional representatives to defend the Trio programs. The Trump administration is seeking to eliminate the Trio programs in their most recent proposed budget. Take action now by spreading the word and contacting your congressional representatives. Let's defend Trio. In today's episode, we have Michael Cashman, Trio alum of the Trio Student Support Services Program from the State University of New York in Plattsburgh. Michael is on the podcast to share his own life experience, his educational journey with Trio Student Support Services, and becoming a Town Supervisor. Coming up in just a bit, Michael Cashman. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario O'Reilly, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lamaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Lonsdale Publishing, Student Access, and thetriostore.com, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for Trio graduation stoles. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You could support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you own a business that serves the Trio community and want to sponsor the podcast, we have different sponsorship packages available. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. Your support helps lift Trio voices. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Michael Cashman, Town Supervisor for Plattsburgh, New York, and Trio alum of the Student Support Services Program. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, Trio Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast currently serves as the Town Supervisor for Plattsburgh, New York, and is a Trio alum of the Student Support Services Program from the State University of New York in Plattsburgh. He is a graduate of the State University of New York at Plattsburgh, obtaining his bachelor's degree in speech communication and master's in college and agency counseling. A fun fact about my guest: he had the distinction of being the youngest elected town supervisor in 2016. My guest was also an honored recipient of the 2024 Trio Achiever by the Council for Opportunity and Education. When he is not busy with work, my guest enjoys working with veterans, hanging out with his dog, and doing a lot of things in between to advocate for Trio. We are honored to have on this podcast Michael Cashman. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much. It is great to be with you and all of Trio Nation. You know, honestly, anytime I have a chance to talk about the life-changing impact of Trio, I'll show up for. I've been a longtime listener of this podcast, and it's great to be with you this evening.
We are very honored on this end for you to be on this podcast and to advocate for Trio and to continuing highlighting all the important work that you do. So thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast, especially during these times where we find the Trio community now being on the offensive to really protect all Trio programs.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the public servant in me combined with the Trio passion, but you're absolutely right. These are defining times. You know, as I keep telling people, it's not just for Trio, but the very idea of educational equity in this country is on the line. And Trio is so much more than just a federal budget line. It's about hope and dignity and opportunity. And as a proud alum, I can tell you that the Student Support Services Program changed my life. I was a first-generation college student navigating a world that I didn't have a roadmap for, and Trio helped find that map. They gave me mentors who believed in me when I doubted myself, and counselors who walked alongside me, not ahead of me, and a community that reminded me that I belonged. And even when the world told me otherwise, Trio isn't about handouts. It's about investing in the human potential, and I've seen it firsthand. Trio students become doctors and scientists and public servants and teachers and veterans entering civilian life. They become leaders. We don't just lift ourselves, we lift our families and communities with us. And without Trio, I wouldn't have been the first in my family to graduate. So I'm really, really proud to be spending some time with you. There's just so much passion about Trio. I could talk about it for hours.
I absolutely love it. And we'll have the time to talk about it in this podcast. So again, Michael, what an honor to have you. You're a Trio Achiever. You've done a lot of work for the community. Again, kudos and congrats on all the awards and the kudos that you have received, sir. You've done amazing work.
Thank you. Having received that National Trio Achiever Award was deeply humbling. You know, when I accepted it, I did it on behalf of every Trio staff member who saw it in me when I didn't fully see it in myself yet. And the award doesn't just have my name on it. It really has all of their names on it, in my opinion. But most notably was Dr. Michelle Carpentier, a mentor and friend. I often refer to her as my North Star. She was my original program director, and she retired a couple of years ago as the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs. And she was just a tremendous friend, and we actually served as colleagues when I was working at SUNY Plattsburgh for a period of time as well.
Wow. So, Michael, we are halfway into 2025. What lessons has this year taught you?
Ooh, deep breath, right?
Deep
2025 has
breaths.
been a
Absolutely.
powerful reminder that in a noisy political landscape, authentic local leadership matters more than ever. At the local level, people aren't just looking for sound bites, they're looking for someone who will show up and listen and get things done. I'm a big believer in servant leadership, and it isn't something that you write in a mission statement. It's something that you prove every day, day in and day out through your actions. You have to listen, you have to learn, you have to lead. It means putting people first, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. But it's also important to remind yourself and others that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely. Can you talk about some of those interests and hobbies that we were covering earlier in your intro? How did you get interested in some of the work that you do and some of the things that keep you busy?
Sure. So I love local history. As a transplant to the North Country, which is a special part here in New York State, we have so much of it, and I love learning. Plattsburgh has been part of the preface of the American story through the American Revolution to the Battle of Plattsburgh to, obviously the current history of today. In fact, the town of Plattsburgh is working with veterans on a special project called the Battlefield Memorial Gateway, which is going to be a veterans park. We're working in conjunction with the Clinton County American Legion, but that space is right here on Lake Champlain, and we'll look over two historical battles. And we're
Oh.
calling it the Triangle of History. It
Mhm.
connects to Valcour Island and Crab Island. And I encourage people that are listening to this to start Googling it to learn a little bit more. But my passion to work with veterans comes from my grandfather. And as far as the other things, we have three dogs. I love doing photography, and my wife and I are foodies. Even though I have celiacs, I love the hunt for food and good eats.
Right on. I gotta ask, is there a particular favorite regional dish or maybe a dish that you like from that's not from New York?
So it's funny. I'll probably end up talking about this a little bit more, but up on our way, we have a thing called Michigans, and it's a special type of hot dog, and
Oh,
I'm yeah, and I'm a big fan of it. But originally, I'm from the Cape in Massachusetts, so I love
uh-huh.
me some seafood as well.
Oh, wow. Right on. What do you hope to accomplish before this year is out?
I try not to measure the year by checklists. I prefer to measure it by impact. And my philosophy has always been pretty simple. You wake up every day and you make it count. If I can leave something or someone better than I found them, then the day had purpose. And progress isn't always about quote unquote headline worthy. It's about
Hmm.
steady, consistent work. It's the quiet wins, the tough conversations, the small improvements that add up over time. So, what do I hope to accomplish? Just that. Keep showing up, doing the work, and making every day count.
I love that. Any plans as we head into this summer season?
Yeah, summer is always a busy season in local government, from field days to farmer markets to community picnics, you name it. I'll be there. That kind of engagement fuels me. But I'm also carving out time for some, quieter time for my wife and I. We're actually
Hmm.
heading to Acadia, Maine, in about a week. It's become one of our favorite places. There's something about the mix of rugged hikes and fresh seafood and just the rest and relaxation that's good for the soul. But we don't take time for granted, whether it's being on the trail in Maine or being back home here in New York and taking in a sunset over Lake Champlain in the Adirondacks. Those
Hmm.
quiet moments really help bring myself back to like full focus. But you were also kind of talking about like some of my favorite food. Later
Yeah.
this summer, we're launching our first ever Michigan Fest. So for those of you who
Ooh.
don't know what a Michigan is or want to learn more about it, if you go to the Town of Plattsburgh's website, townofplattsburgh.com, you can look it up. We even have a recipe so you can try it yourself. But this festival is going to be a celebration of North Country culture, community pride, and a meaningful way to also support our veterans.
That's awesome, Michael. That's amazing. So we're at the my favorite part of the podcast where we rewind the clocks a bit. Can you talk about your upbringing? What was that like for you?
I've been truly blessed to have family close to me throughout my entire life. My maternal grandparents lived just downstairs in an in-law apartment, so their presence was a constant source of comfort and guidance to me. Fun fact, my noni and I share the same birthday, so you can guess who the favorite is among the grandchildren. I was also fortunate to have a strong mother and stepfather and father, all caring eyes watching over me. At the same time, I also grew up with a lot of autonomy. as
Hmm.
an only child, which meant that it taught me responsibility early on and a lot of independence. But my grandparents especially shaped who I am. They taught me grit, gratitude, and the importance of giving back. Um, their steady example grounded me through many challenges. I also had an aunt Hazel who lived to the wise old age of 103. She
Wow.
never had more than a fifth grade education, and her
Hmm.
famous line was, "What did you learn today?" She
Oh,
believed
wow.
every moment that you were living, every moment that you were breathing, you had something to learn from. And all of that supported my independence and fueled my drive to do my family proud and keep moving forward no matter what obstacles were ahead of me.
Outstanding. How would your family describe you?
My family would describe me as loyal, determined, but with a bit of Irish stubbornness in the best way. Uh, they tell you I'm someone who never forgets where he came from, and someone that never that will never be outworked. I really believe that you just got to give it your all, no matter what you're doing.
What was your relationship with education like? Was it something you were naturally gravitating toward, or did you find it challenging?
So honestly, I hated high school.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
be, Absolutely hated high school. Being dyslexic, I ran into my fair share of educators who weren't very supportive in the early periods of my life, which made it even harder. But even then, I knew college was the goal, though.
Okay.
I was the first in my family to aim for the path, and
Hmm.
education was both a lifeline and a challenge. I knew that I needed to go to college if I was going to do the big things that I wanted to do on behalf of my family and myself.
Did you have a particular favorite subject? Like, even if school wasn't a favorite, was there a subject that you really gravitated toward, or at least you enjoyed?
It was history.
History.
Growing up, my parents valued travel, and we never lived what I would say high on the hog. You know, we were also the type of family that never did like pizza on Fridays. We were the
Hmm.
family who would scrimp every extra dollar so that we could travel. I was very fortunate that I visited with my parents London, Israel, Egypt,
Oh,
Ireland,
wow.
Paris, Germany, China. And a lot of times people hear that and go, "Wow, there's no way that you came from a working class family." But we
Yeah.
were. It was never a five-star experience, but it was about seeing the world and being connected with other people.
Wow. That's amazing, Michael. I mean, one would assume, and you're absolutely right to point it out, is like, well, a family that travels they're able to afford, but you're telling me like you were scrimping and making sure that family was saving to be able to go just to go to these places.
Absolutely. And let me put it in perspective. My mother was a secretary for many years, and my stepfather worked in a sheet metal factory. And there were many times that they would be working extra hours in the
Hmm.
evening. And, it just meant that, I would take on some additional responsibilities back home. Um, I've had two jobs since I was 13
Wow.
until I became supervisor. This
Uh-huh.
is the first time in my life that I haven't had two jobs.
Wow.
So I've learned the hustle, and you take that money and you make sure that you do responsible things. And part of that was seeing the world and becoming more compassionate, more understanding, and more connected to our fellow beings.
Absolutely. What do you remember most about the early part of your educational experience? Does something stick out?
Yeah, in school, I was always looking for the escape hatch, honestly. Um,
Really?
and yeah, to me, that was college. I wanted more than what my small town could offer me at the time. I wasn't running away from something. I was running towards the chance to restart on my own terms. I
Hmm.
knew college would be that key, and it was.
Did you pick up any academic or non-academic interests during this time?
Yeah, I dabbled in some theater. I volunteered quite a bit, but honestly, I spent most of my time working. I usually had two jobs, like I said before,
Mhm.
sometimes more. I wasn't just filling time, I was building towards something. I was focused on getting out, on creating a different type of future. And college wasn't just the next step, it was the escape hatch that I said.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
was determined to get there. So I needed both the life experience and the finances.
Right on. If you don't mind me if I can ask a follow-up question, with
Sure.
theater, did you find yourself more expressive, or was there a particular like play that you really wanted to be a part of, or what was it about theater that you really gravitated toward?
Um, the types of theater that I participated in were both unscripted and scripted. So I remember being in the play Oklahoma,
Right
to
on.
also doing some of that kind of like whose line is it anyways, and really just putting myself out there, kind of pushing myself to take on the challenges. As you can imagine, being someone that's dyslexic, trying to remember long scripts was quite difficult, but it was a
Hmm.
challenge worthy to take on, and it was just kind of again pushing myself to see things through someone else's eyes.
Wow. Can you talk about your high school experience? What was that like for you?
My high school experience, overall, there were really great moments and there were really kind of blah moments. One of the things that I was really most proud of is I became very good friends with the librarian in our school,
Mhm.
and we actually authored a couple of grants that actually started the public TV access channel
Oh,
in our
wow.
town.
Uh-huh.
I also did a couple of grants with the librarian to get a number of books into the library. She ended up eventually passing away, and it was really a sad experience. They named the library after her. It was so worthy. I always looked at her as an individual that kind of identified what it meant to be learned or scholar, because she always used to say that, I know you hate high school, but education is so much more. Every time you
Mhm.
pick up a book, every time you have a conversation, and she reminded me of my Aunt Hazel that never had that more than that fifth grade education. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where my inspiration for continued education came from, is people around me that said, education isn't always in the structure of the classroom. It can
Mhm.
happen beyond that.
Wow. When we talk about college, because you said you looked at college as an escape hatch, when did
Mhm.
that process of thinking about college come about for you? And were there steps or things that you were already, doing to get toward that direction?
Yeah, so in Massachusetts, they had this really great program that if you had the space in your high school schedule, you
Hmm.
could take college courses. And
Oh.
if you got a B or better, that they would actually cover the cost. So I took full advantage of that by going to Bridgewater State University, which was about 45 minutes away.
Hmm.
And I gravitated towards communication and TV production classes. And
Hmm.
honestly, it lit a fire in me. It gave me a glimpse of what college could be. And it was exactly what I had hoped. And by my senior year of high school, I was working full time, taking college classes, and still walked with my graduating class. So while high school
Wow.
was tough,
Yeah.
college gave me that hope that I was looking for. And my stepfather, in particular, was one of my biggest cheerleaders through it all.
Wow. So it sounds like the direction for college was already there, setting up the pathway. Who are the folks that you trusted with this discussion about college and college plans?
Sure. So I was really fortunate that my parents made the effort to take me to visit colleges. And I know not everyone gets that experience and
Hmm.
that support. These road trips sparked the real conversation about the future, right? I
Hmm.
knew I wanted to go to college, but what college? What did it look like? Where did I want to go? So I leaned on my mom and I leaned on my stepfather. And they kind of challenged me, and I jokingly said that I knew that because of that independence that they developed in me, that I wanted to go far enough away that they had to pick up the phone to check in on me before they'd come visit.
Like the typical college student that, or the transitioning into, like, I want to be far enough away from home and not have to like come back home so quickly.
Exactly, exactly. And throughout my entire college experience, I only spent one summer, not even during winter breaks, with them. I became a resident assistant, so I would often go back early, and so on and so forth. I did an internship one summer, and it was the only summer that my parents cohabitated again, and we all agreed that that would never happen again.
Yeah. Wow. And it sounds to me, Michael, that you were just really more pushing to keep yourself busy and ingrained in the college experience.
And I know that you'll get to that here in a little while as our conversation goes, but it really sounds like college and higher education was a nice setting for you to thrive.
It was. I was also inspired because the two kids across the road from me, like literally across the road from me, were both college students. And
Uh-huh.
I would have conversations with them from time to time. And again, I was the first one in my family to go. So when they would talk about college and university, it just felt like something I was meant for.
Hmm.
And I didn't go to either of the universities that those folks went to.
Hmm.
Um, but they kind of set kind of um, that dream or spark that dream a little bit more than what I already had.
That's awesome. Did you have a guide or an idea of what you would need to get into college? Because I know for a lot of students looking into college, either they have like everything mapped out, they have like bullet points of what they need to do. Did you have something similar or at least some sort of roadmap on how to get there?
I did. So being dyslexic, I knew that I needed a program like Student Support Services, but at the
Mhm.
time, I didn't know Trio even existed.
Right.
So you don't know what you don't know, right? And my search to figure things out, I came across Trio. And once I did, it felt like finding the missing puzzle piece.
Ah. So, and I'm gonna kind of be on this point of it sounds like you did a lot of research beforehand.
I did, and I was fortunate to again have my stepfather and my mom and my grandparents and stuff, all kind of pushing and pulling and challenging and asking questions and stuff like that. Um, but at the end of the day, I always remember my stepfather saying, like, you're the one that has to pick the school. Like the school has to pick you, but you also have to pick the school.
Well, I like how you frame that because I think for a lot of first generation and students who don't have a ton of support to get to college, they immediately assume like, well, the college has to pick me. I have to do well. But I
Mhm.
like the way you framed it is not only does the school have to pick you, but you have to pick the school as well. That has to be a good match.
Absolutely. And that's why I always, applauded individuals that decide to become transfers, because if it's not the right place for you, it's okay. Find that
Yeah,
place that you need to land in.
great point there, Michael. Very great point.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. Nosotros Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now, back to the podcast.
So, college ready students have typically a list of 5 to 10 colleges when they're looking to apply. Did you have a similar list as you were doing your research for college?
Okay, so this is kind of funny to some degree. I looked at a number of schools
Uh-huh.
because I knew two things. I wanted to stay, I didn't want to stay close to home, but I also needed a program like Student Support Services. So that was like my baseline.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until the very last campus that I visited, Plattsburgh University, that it clicked. And I looked at a ton of schools in Pennsylvania. I mean, tons and tons of school. And honestly, it was because of Dr. Michelle Carpentier. Her unwavering belief in me changed the course of my life. I had below 1,000 SAT score.
Hmm.
Standardized tests and I never got along, but
Yeah.
I knew I could prove my capacity to do the work in other ways. And I fought to get through the early admission process. And it was
Hmm.
because of Michelle who had helped open the door. And in the end, I didn't have that 5 or 10 school list. I had just one, and it was the right one.
So you had narrowed it down to just one school, and this is the one that
I,
you really wanted to be at.
Plattsburgh University is the only school I applied for.
Wow.
I refused to accept that that would not be the university.
Wow. Talk about
I,
dedication and like
I
seeing a goal and going for it.
I've also fully recognized, now that I'm older, that that probably flies in the face of what you should do. But I've also been a big believer that you can always recalibrate. And if it didn't happen, then I would have just had to have recalibrated and found a different way.
But to your point though, that when you identify a school so strongly with that you feel like there's the support and all the foundation is there, it's like then the choice really becomes much more obvious because you really did all the work. You put in the elbow grease to look at every single option, and you said, you know what, this is the option that I'm going for right now is the one that's going to help me succeed.
Yep.
So, talk about the moment you graduated from high school, Michael. What was that moment like for you and for your family?
I don't know if you've ever heard that song by Lenny Kravitz, "Fly Away," but
Oh, fly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was my anthem. I'll never forget on graduation day, I was blaring it as I was kind of rolling out. And after fighting tooth and nail through high school, I finally made it. And graduation wasn't just a ceremony, it was liberation. It meant
Mm,
I had taken the first big step into owning my own future,
hmm.
and I was ready to prove I belonged in college, become the first in my family to earn a post-secondary degree, and tackle whatever unknown challenges that were ahead of me.
Wow. You decided to attend the State University of New York at Plattsburgh. You already gave us great reasons why. Was there a program specifically you're aiming for in the school, or was it because of the support?
It was part of the support. And, like I said before, it was the last campus I visited, but something clicked. The
Hmm.
turning point was meeting Dr. Carpentier. I still remember sitting in her office and noticing a certificate on the wall.
Hmm.
And I asked her what it was, and she told me it was for something called Omicron Delta Kappa, a National Leadership Honor Society.
Oh, wow.
Without hesitation, she looked at me and she said, "You'll be in that someday."
Oh,
And that
wow.
kind and that kind of unflinching belief stayed with me. She
Hmm.
made me feel like I belonged, even though I hadn't even matriculated at the college yet. And fun fact, years later, I would not only join Omicron Delta Kappa, I would serve on the national board of directors for a number of years.
Wow. Talk about like I don't know if I can call it a full circle moment, but definitely a reflection of you started here and still ended up serving because of full belief of someone believed in you and you said, yeah, I could see myself doing this.
Absolutely.
So can you share with us about the moment you set foot on campus? What do you recall the most about that moment?
I remember looking around and thinking, okay, you're here. Now you've got to make it count.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what I tried to do every day. I got
Hmm.
involved in my service fraternity, student government, residence life, whatever I could. And I tried to pair up my academics with my co-curricular activities to really grow in every way possible.
So, first year students either know exactly what they want to major in or absolutely have no idea what they want to do. Where in the spectrum did you find yourself in that?
Yeah, so as I noted before, I'd taken some classes at Bridgewater State University that kind of helped set my original path a little bit. It led me to wanting to do something in the realm of communication. So I started with TV production. But
Hmm.
then I switched from production to speech communication, which is a combo of public relation and marketing, because a professor tapped me on the shoulder and said, I think you would be really good at this.
Wow. What was there initial interest in that? Is that something that you expressed interest to, or was it more of like a discovery of, wow, I really enjoy this?
It was a discovery of taking some classes with a professor,
Mhm.
and I just really clicked with not only the professor but the subject, and then the encouragement, kind of blended together to pivot.
That's outstanding. Did you feel overwhelmed in your first year of college, or did you feel, were you able to kind of still balance it out, kind of adapting and going into college your first year?
Yeah, it did. I didn't know that the systems and the expectations or the lingos, but then Trio stepped in and things began to click, right? So like one of my mentors used to say, if you're ever in trouble, ask for the form. Need a new roommate, ask for the form. Need to change a class, ask for the form.
Yeah.
Get a parking ticket, ask for the form. And it kind of became the joke a little bit, but Trio was like, ask for the form. So it was really just kind of getting my mind wrapped around like there were ways to be successful, but I had to make sure to become a self advocate. And then once I knew where the path was going, that I had to commit to taking on the challenge of going down that path.
Absolutely. I I'm going to ask you this question because I feel like you've covered it already, but I really want to
Sure.
know more about your Trio origin story about did Trio find you or did you find Trio? How did that work?
I'm a firm believer that it's a little bit of both. You
Hmm.
know, I was looking for a college that had something um, that student support services offered, but Trio found me because I believe if it wasn't for Michelle and the program and the values of putting students first, that I probably would have found a different college or university that I felt more connected with.
Uh-huh.
So I believe it's a little bit of both.
Talk about your Trio experience. What are some highlights?
Highlights include everything from the academic coaching to I was very fortunate to receive some financial aid and also, navigating that whole realm of FAFSAs, etc., life mentoring. But the real
Hmm.
highlight was feeling seen and being believed in loudly and consistently. In fact, I end up running for the Student Association president. I'm the only person to have served in that role twice.
Oh, wow.
And I advocated for many things on behalf of Trio. During my time, we were able to get a handicap accessible van,
Oh,
for
wow.
example. But one of the stories that I love sharing was I was in a faculty senate meeting at one point, and there was a curmudgeony faculty member that was kind of smiling because at the time the university was kind of changing their academic standards for admission.
Hmm.
And she stood up and she said, "So, are you telling me that we're not going to have to work with some of those students anymore?" And really, what she was referring to is trio students.
Uh-huh.
And I remember being in the room and locking eyes with Michelle. We kind of looked at each other. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
Uh-huh.
And I remember going to Michelle's office after that meeting. She put out an all-campus email blast and talked about how trio students uh, overperform and retention rates and all this stuff, and just like laid it out. But that following fall, as the Student Association president, I got to speak during the president's opening breakfast, and I reminded people that I am Trio.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times people forget that advocacy it comes in the form of self-advocacy, but you also have to make sure that you're lending yourself to the larger conversation when people are attacking you. And so for me, one of the biggest highlights of my life was finding my voice as a trio student, but also finding my voice that I could lend it to others when they needed it most.
Michael, that is very inspirational, especially as we talked about earlier in the podcast, that now in the time where Trio needs more voices more than ever, I think yours is super, super valuable to have in the mix, but also encouraging others to see that they can also be advocates not only for themselves, but for the people around them that still need these TRIO programs? I wanted
I,
to. Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Michael. Didn't mean to
no, go
interrupt you.
ahead. Sorry, I was taking a glass of water.
Oh no, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm usually pretty good with timing questions, and I totally botched that. Um, what resources or a resource from Trio did you really enjoy using while on this college journey? What was it that really sticks out in your mind when you think about your time at the University of Plattsburgh and thinking about your college journey overall?
To me, it was the wraparound services. It was tutoring, advising, the emotional support. Dr. Carpentier used to use a model of challenge and support for
Uh-huh.
sure. So it really was all of it because left, independent by, just if you were to think of tutoring by itself, yeah, tutoring might help that one thing, but advising was also about, making sure that you understood like that there were still going to be classes that were going to be hard and you shouldn't just take the easy class to get the grade. You should be taking the class that's going to make you the best future professional in the field. So, making sure that when you were having a tough day, like I remember as an undergraduate, my grandfather, who I speak of so much, he passed away. And I could have
Mhm.
very easily started to retreat within myself and say, I don't know if I can do this. But it was the emotional support of the TRIO program that reminded me that my grandfather believed in me and that he would want me to be, at the university and continuing my journey.
That's wonderful. And let me just outstretch my condolences to you, Michael. I know how much family means, and losing grandfather, absolutely. My heart goes out to you. Um, Trio folks are super helpful in navigating the college experience, especially with aspects of policy or registration for classes or anything like that. Was there a particular or specific Trio staff member that you clicked with or served as your mentor? I kind of have an idea of who that might be, but I'm going to give you the space to talk about this mentor.
Yeah. So Dr. Carpentier was my mentor, but I can honestly say from Betty Ann, who was the secretary at the front of the office,
Uh-huh.
to Aruna Gandhi, who did the untimed testing, and everyone else, the entire team put students first. And they held space for their students and made sure that when you were coming in, it wasn't just to do quote unquote business. It was
Mhm.
about developing relationships and encouragement and challenging and and also calling you out too, right? If you had missed a tutoring a session, like, hey, where were you on Tuesday? So
Uh-huh.
that full support, that challenge and support model was definitely driven by Michelle, but everyone um, carried it as a banner to make sure that the work got done.
That's awesome. I think that's very important that you have accountability folks that can follow you each step of the way and understand. At least that's been my experience with Trio, is having folks who understand the college process, the college, um, not only the process but itself, but also how things are supposed to flow and still hold you accountable to your overall goal. So amazing on every single end. Sounds like you had very good folks around you. Um, you majored in speech and communication. Can you tell us what in particular did you enjoy about this major, and did you have a particular career in mind choosing this major?
Yeah, so as I said before, I did pivot in the communications field. I started in TV production classes, and then a faculty encouraged me to get into the public relations and marketing. What I enjoyed was how integrated it was into kind of a product,
Hmm.
like being able to uh, you know to kind of the it's marketing and public relations. It's like tell its story, right? It
Hmm.
was
Right.
very uh, forward facing, if that made any sense.
Totally. Yeah.
And then as far as a job, at the time, I was not really identifying something specific because I was already starting to think about my master's probably by my junior year,
Right on.
and that kind of clicked pretty quickly for me as well.
Absolutely. So you covered this a little bit already, but can you expand on this particular program, the speech and communication? What did you enjoy most about being in this degree program, or what skills or insight did it offer you?
It taught me how to listen as much as how to speak, and
Mm,
that's a foundation for what I believe servant leadership is about. Because to serve people, you also have to be able to speak and advocate on behalf of others and yourself. So it put me in a position where I really needed to understand the publics that I was interacting with.
Can you talk about the moment you graduated from the University of Plattsburgh? What did this moment mean to you, and what did it mean to your family?
Yeah, I mean, it was a triumph, and it wasn't just for me, but it was for everyone who had ever supported me along the way. And it was proof that possibility wins when given a chance. Um, I still to this day have photos from my graduation in my office. And I remember being surrounded by my family and just how important that feeling uh, has just stayed with me. It's a full body experience, and I'm very proud, and I'm very thankful.
You graduated in 2003 and then you pursued a master's. You said you were already eyeing to be in a master's program. What other additional factors motivated your decision?
Yeah, so my undergraduate years were shaped by a really active involvement in student leadership, from resident assistant to ODK to my fraternity, student government, etc. And I had a variety of mentors with advanced degrees that encouraged me to keep to the path.
Mhm.
And when the opportunity arose to apply for a graduate assistantship, it felt like a natural step. So the graduate assistantship allowed me to go for my master's. And the counseling degree aligned perfectly with my philosophy to listen, to learn, and to lead. It was
Wow,
multidimensional. It connected deeply with my passion for advocacy and helping others overcome challenges. Um, and it just was a very natural progression for me.
I love that. That's wonderful. And it really speaks to your skill as a speaker and someone that listens. I've really enjoyed one, talking to you, but also how you share and how you frame subjects. Very, very impressive. Yeah, man, I've enjoyed so far this interview with you because it sounds like you have a passion about talking with people, listening, and creating space for people.
Appreciate that.
Can you talk about your graduate student experience? What was that like for you?
It was certainly rigorous, and yet it was transformative, right? I had to prove myself yet again that I could do the academic work, that I could juggle all the other responsibilities that I had. Um, but it was something that I set my eyes on, and I was absolutely dogged about getting to the finish line for.
Hmm. Hmm. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the undergraduate and graduate experiences? Because I know for a lot of students, when they go through the undergraduate program, it's like it really feels like checking a checklist, right? You're going through the classes, you're taking the classes that you absolutely have to graduate. But the graduate program also is a little bit different. Can you speak to those two experiences?
Sure. So the way that I looked at it was grad school was about the mastery and the mentorship.
Ah,
So taking what I've now learned and try to share it with others. It sharpened my focus, it broadened my capacity to lead. I also had the opportunity, for example, to work in the SSS office for one of my classes. So it
oh,
deepened
interesting.
my connection and appreciation for the work. So I got to work with first year students. And I remember kind of being in their position, not that long ago.
Uh-huh.
And I believe from a counseling perspective, uh, being able to authentically empathize and share perspective was a really powerful opportunity for me to develop as a professional and for me to share with students that were growing on their own journey.
That's awesome. Did Trio play any role in your preparation for grad school?
Absolutely. They taught me how to advocate for myself, how to study smarter, and how to believe that I belonged in every room that I entered. In fact, when I was working on my master's, I had to take a comprehensive exam. So at the very end, you get like 7 questions,
Uh-huh.
and you have 24, oh, sorry, you have like a weekend to do these essays. And I did it, and there were two faculty members that review um, uh, kind of your write-ups.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the faculty members wanted to fail me, and if I had failed, it meant that I would not get my master's.
Mm.
And it took self-advocacy for me to step up and say, I believe in myself. I know the subject matter. Let me verbally defend it.
Hmm.
And I went in between the two of them and met with them for an hour and verbally defended a very in-depth question, and I was able to graduate.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. One, to
Yeah.
advocate for yourself and really say, to speak a mastery of a subject, that's amazing, first of all. But to also be able to have uh, just the spirit enough of advocacy to say, you know what? I know you wanted to fail me, but here's the reason, and here's all the things that I know about this subject. That takes a tremendous level of self-confidence.
But and to me, it goes back to the trio part of it because I really had to study smart. I really had to make sure that I knew my materials.
Uh-huh.
So, I knew the coursework. I just wasn't capturing it in the written way, which I've always told people. I don't apologize for being dyslexic. I put that out there a lot.
Hmm.
Um, because I tell people I see things from a different perspective. And if you give me some time, I can share my perspective in a way that I think it really, um, uh, highlights things in a unique way that people can come to an understanding for. So I much prefer to talk with people than to write.
What did graduating with a master's mean to you and to your family?
It meant that dreams, even the wild ones, come true, right?
Mm.
When I set off on this journey, I didn't think of my master's initially. It was I want to get my undergraduate degree and then I want to kind of go into the workforce.
Hmm.
So it was an extended dream, and I was really proud. And again, I also have a photo with me and my family when I was hooded with my master's that serves as a point of inspiration here in my office.
That's awesome. You held several positions in SUNY, in Plattsburgh. Can you talk about that experience? Because that means working in higher ed, right?
I did. I worked in higher education for 11 years. I worked in many of the programs that I did as an undergraduate and graduate student, actually. So I helped to shape the same student experience that helped shaped me. That was definitely a full circle moment.
Wow.
Um, Before I left, I was the assistant director for the Center for Student Involvement. My portfolio included everything from student government to the volunteer clearinghouse to Omicron Delta Kappa, new student orientation, and many, many, many other things. And um, it was, I love my alma mater. It was a really special place, not only academically and with Trio. I also met my wife at freshman orientation.
Aw,
So the whole thing. So to be able to work at that place and to be able to give back in that way was a meaningful experience overall.
that is awesome. One, meet your wife there, but also have all these experiences and then really work in higher education. It's really outstanding. So now I've got to ask you this next question because when folks look at your resume or even look at your past experience, right? The next step in your career was you were elected the town supervisor for Plattsburgh. How did this opportunity come about? Yeah, that's like I guess for in my mind, it seems like a large transition, but it might not be. Can you tell us how that opportunity came about?
It is a little bit of a transition and not. And the reason I say that was I was serving on my town council as a council member,
Uh-huh.
and the town supervisor had been in that leadership role for a number of years and decided that he was not going to run again. But I was among the chorus of people saying, "Who's going to be the next town supervisor?" And it was a friend of mine who tapped me on the shoulder and he said, I think you should run for supervisor. Mind you, I absolutely loved my job at Plattsburgh State University.
Hmm.
Um, and I said, no, no, no. And he goes, no, really, I think you should do it. Sometimes the train only leaves the station once. And he
Mm.
says, do me a favor, talk to three of your best friends about just kind of the idea of it. So I went home that night and I talked with my wife, Olivia, and I thought one of two things are going to happen. One is she's going to immediately pack all of her stuff and go back to her parents and say, I'm done with this crazy idea. Or she's going to put arsenic in my coffee. But in fact, she was the very first person to say, listen, you know, you believe in public service. And, one of the things in my portfolio was student government, and I was a former student government leader. She's always, she's like, you're always talking about the next generation of leadership.
Uh-huh.
You're being given the opportunity. She goes, and what do you have to lose? And it was right, because if I lost that race, I still had my job at the university. If I won, then I would, take the seat. And then in 4 years, if it wasn't right, then I would recalibrate.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right.
but I ran, and not only was I the youngest ever elected individual to win this seat. I'm not from the town originally. I'm not from the North Country originally,
Hmm.
and I won by 62% of the vote.
Wow. That's outstanding, Michael. Congratulations on a great election for that first year. To be elected the youngest town supervisor, too, that is also a massive accomplishment.
Yeah, it was crazy. It still gives me chills, and it's very humbling. Every day I come to the office and I just think of how amazing this community is, and how blessed I've been given by the gift of trust to lead on people's behalf.
Is this role something you had always envisioned for yourself, or was this more of an opportunity that you're like, you know what, might as well?
Um, I always believed that I would probably get involved in some type of public service role beyond the town council at some point.
Hmm.
But the timeline was certainly not something that I was expecting.
I see. Can you provide some highlights about your role as a town supervisor? Things that you've done, things you've accomplished, things that you look forward to doing.
Sure. So a lot of people are going to listen to this and not necessarily even know what a town supervisor is, because often we think of in local government as mayors.
Yeah.
A town supervisor is very similar to a mayor,
Oh.
except they hold kind of three distinct roles. One is I serve as the chief financial officer, I
Hmm.
serve as the chief elected official, and I also serve as a legislator.
Oh, wow.
So during our meetings, I vote on all items that come before the board, for example. But the role is to work on things like revitalizing our economy, building bipartisan coalitions, championing vulnerable populations like our veterans,
Hmm.
reimagining what local government can be and how it can serve, the greater good. We've spent a lot of time since I've been in office on a water and wastewater capital plan.
Hmm.
And the reason that we've done that is infrastructure is a critical component to local government. I always remind people that most people interact with local government at least 10 times, before they leave the end of their street going to work or school in the morning. It starts typically with turning on the shower, or brushing their teeth with tap water,
Hmm.
to driving down roads, to being under lights that are on the roads. I mean, we could go on and on and on how local government is ingrained there in your life. But nonetheless, I believe we need to lead with heart and hustle, and that's what I'm really proud of to bring to the local government perspective of things.
I'm so glad you framed it that way because I think when we think about government and kind of when you're looking at national government, federal or state, either people feel super positive about it and then they're like very motivated and they love what state or government or federal government is doing, but they never really think about like the local government and what it's doing for you. And I love your framing about how you have various touch points throughout the day without even knowing it that you've interacted with your local government. That was a very awesome kind of play-by-play slash walkthrough because I never thought about it that way.
Absolutely. What I love about local government is we are the closest to the people. And that's not to say that people that are in other types of positions don't play important roles, but you don't often walk into your local grocery store and bump into your, federal senator or representative or the president or the governor.
Right.
I do a lot of business in the grocery store, and the produce aisle is where I hold, office hours, like my wife likes to say, and I love that because you get to see people, you get to interact with people. I always tell people that we may not agree 100% of the time. Heck, my wife and I don't agree 100% of the time, but we can find common ground, and as long as it's moral and ethical, I'm going to do whatever I can to find a path forward and a solution for those individuals.
That's awesome. Michael, 10, 15 years from now, what's next for you?
I don't know, but I look at it through a prism that hopefully it's based on continuing to build, continuing to serve, and always looking for the next way to give back to my community and those that have supported me over the years.
That's awesome. I'm going to put you on the hot seat. If you had some advice for TRIO professionals listening to this podcast, what would this advice be?
Keep showing up. You're not just educators, you're lifelines, and your work matters now more than ever. And that work also echoes through generations. You are going to make impacts and impressions on people in ways that you will never know, but I guarantee you are truly the inspiration by example that your students and your colleagues need. And just don't give up. Lean in with heart and keep doing what you're doing because it matters.
That's wonderful advice. What about advice that you have for TRIO students, either they're pre-college, in college, or thinking about going to college?
You belong, you're enough, and keep going. And then go back to lift someone else up. My grandfather used to say this: believe in yourself because you are the most qualified person to be you. And I would add, live life authentically. Really own who you are. And it may take some time to understand who you are, but that's okay. That's part of the journey.
That's wonderful advice. What are you currently listening to, watching, or reading?
So I've been rewatching The West Wing, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things political, and I read and listen to a lot of political stuff. But I actually want to suggest a reading, and it's called The Radical Leap by Steve Farber. The Radical Leap by Steve Farber. It's a powerful book about bringing more love, energy, audacity into leadership, qualities that I try to live by every day. And it reminds us that leadership is less about authority and more about inspiring others to be their best selves. The book may be out of print, but go to a local bookstore, go online. It's a fantastic book. It's the book that I gift the most to other people, actually.
That is awesome. Can you describe yourself using only one word?
Grit.
Grit. I like it. Very good. Michael, it has been a true pleasure to have you on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast. Thank you so much for giving us your time and stopping by and sharing your TRIO story.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Michael, we have a tradition on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast where we have the guest do a sign-off. Do you care to do the honors?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Michael Cashman, and I'm a proud TRIO alumni of the Student Support Services Program and a graduate of Plattsburgh University. Today, I'm privileged to serve as the Town Supervisor for the town of Plattsburgh in New York. And there's one thing I know for certain, and it's this: TRIO changes lives because TRIO works.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a TRIO program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk TRIO. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk TRIO. We want to get your story to the public.
You just heard from our guest, Michael Cashman, TRIO alum of the Student Support Services Program at State University of New York, Plattsburgh. Thank you, Michael, for being on the podcast and for sharing your TRIO journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk TRIO podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lemaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Longsdale Publishing, Student Access, and the TRIO Store, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for TRIO graduation stoles. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can sponsor the Let's Talk TRIO podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of Let's Talk TRIO podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk TRIO podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. Be sure to follow the Let's Talk TRIO podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This episode was recorded Monday, June 9th, 2025. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.